Okay, whew. Today I want to talk about radical responsibility. This was something that I have given a lot of thought to, so I'm excited to share it with you. I hope you're all good. Oh, hang on in, babe. Good to see you, darling. I saw that pretty material you have in your Instagram post. What are you going to make with it? um, yeah, so radical responsibility. What is it and how does it help us and what can we use it for? Hey, Luxar. Nice to see you. Welcome. So I've been having some discussions recently with people, and this is something that I've seen in my own life, right? What is radical responsibility? Radical responsibility is when we are taking responsibility for everything in our lives, even the things that seem like it was somebody else's problem or somebody else was the one who did the wrong thing, right? What is radical responsibility and how does that like shift how we are? Hey, Jay, good to see you. What's an example of this, right? So a lot of times I hear people, especially in relationships, this happens a lot, right? Someone's like, okay, well, the relationship went bad. This person didn't turn out to be who they said they were. They cheated on me. They changed in the relationship, or they weren't able to give me what I needed in a relationship, right? There's all of this stuff that comes up, particularly in relationships, right? Where it's like, well, I didn't do anything bad. I didn't cheat on them. They did it. Okay. And how does radical responsibility help with that? Oftentimes we are really resistant when someone does something like that to taking any kind of risk, like, it's not my fault. I didn't do the bad thing, right? They did it. But instead recognizing like, well, maybe like, what was my part, right? What was my part? And that's this is so powerful, because if you understand your part in it, then you are actually an active creator of your life instead of the victim of your life. You see, that's why this is so powerful. So let me give you an example, okay, of my own life, right? So I was in a relationship with someone years ago, and we had started out as friends, and then we just kind of slowly kind of morphed into a relationship, right? And after a couple years in this relationship, I was like ready to have more. I wanted, to have a baby. I wanted to get married and stuff like that. But so I asked him, I expressed this stuff to him and found out that he really didn't want to have children, and he didn't want to have children ever. Now, was that his fault? No, it really wasn't his fault, right? Because I recognized that I had gone into this relationship not really being serious about him. It was just, we were just good friends, and then, play buddies, and then we ended up kind of in a relationship. But then I was like, well, now I wanted to be more serious, but I didn't have any of those conversations with him early on, you see? So it wasn't his fault that he wasn't like in that zone, right? There are other times where I've gotten into relationships where the other person wasn't ready to commit. Okay, that's another type of one. The other person wasn't ready to commit. They weren't in a position to commit. But then I had to recognize, did I secretly, is it really me that wasn't ready to commit, right? Is it really me? Is that why I got into a relationship with someone who wasn't fully available? Okay. And I had to start to notice that was a pattern for me, where I might get into a relationship with somebody who wasn't fully available because I wasn't fully available, because I really didn't want to commit. Now that can be hard to see that about yourself, especially when in your own mind you're like, well, now I'm ready to move on and to have like a real relationship or whatever. And it's easy to blame them and say, well, it didn't work out because they weren't ready to commit, instead of saying, did I get into that relationship with somebody? Did I attract somebody like that because of the little part in me that I'm not acknowledging? Right? Why not reply my previous message? Because you just said miss. You got to actually ask a question so I can reply. Hey, Mike, good to see you, my man. How are you? Mine got committed. Yours got committed. What? Tell me about it. Tell me. What's another example of that? Another example of that. Oh, okay. Here's another good one. Okay. So, and this one took a really long time for me to see. This one took years for me. I mean, it was years after the relationship was over before I was finally able to acknowledge and be like, wow, what was my part in that, right? So I was in a relationship with somebody who was in many ways a wonderful, wonderful person, but they were also very, very jealous and like really, really jealous. And it used to drive me nuts because I was like, I've never cheated on you. I'm like, it just doesn't even cross my mind. Like, how are you so jealous and like controlling and freaking out, you know, like calling me and who's that guy in the background I can hear talking and this and that and the other. And it was just pissed me off because I was like, I don't cheat. So why are you, you know, throwing this on me, right? This is not my problem. Well, thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. And then I realized, it took me years to realize that I had played a role in this issue, right? It wasn't just all him. Yes, he did have an issue with it. But what was my little part that I wasn't recognizing? I refused to commit. See, I was refusing to commit to that relationship. He had asked me to marry him and I wasn't, and I said no, so I'm not ready to get married, right? So even though I was in it and I wasn't cheating, right? In my heart, I wasn't committed in it. And in my head, even though I didn't say it, whenever he was acting crazy or he was like, you know, lose his temper or, you know, get jealous or whatever like that, in my head, I would be telling myself, oh, it's okay, I can just leave. I'll just leave, you know, it's okay, I'll leave, right? If this gets too bad, I'll leave. So I had one foot out the door mentally the whole time, right? So think about that. Even if I didn't say it, even if I was saying all the right things to him, there must have been a way that he sensed that energy, and that was making him probably even more insecure. So even though like on the outside, I was the best girlfriend ever, there was that piece in my heart where I was like, boy, if he gets any more like just, you know, difficult, then I'm just going to go. Right. So, and I couldn't commit. Now, of course, it was the wrong relationship, and there were many reasons why I shouldn't have committed, right? And there were many issues involved with that. But, and I'm very glad I didn't. But still, you know, I had to recognize what was my part in that. Well, I did have a part in that, you know, even if it wasn't obvious to me at the time because I was doing all the right actions, you see? So as I understand more about the type of energy that we give off and the subtle things, right? What is this about radical responsibility? Hello, Jay. What is radical responsibility? It is recognizing, wait, how am I doing this? How am I, if you, like, I know a lot of people who tell me, oh man, I just always get involved with these psycho women, right? I get into a relationship and then they just turn psycho, right? Okay, that should be a sign because the same person in that relationship is you. You are the one in that relationship, which means there may be something inside of you that is attracting a psycho woman. Or it's possible that you are doing something and creating drama that brings out that psycho, right? We attract people who oftentimes have, we often attract our core wounds. That's what they say, right? We often attract people that are the complement to our core wounds. And this is like something like a lot of like psychologists, sociologists, energy workers, spiritual teachers, they really understand. And I've seen this happen over and over again and this is why, right? This is why, like you'll see TEDx talks, everything, right? They say you marry your father or you marry your mother, right? A lot of people marry someone who has a lot of those characteristics, or at least their first long relation. And unless they fix that, right? Like if they had a difficult relationship with one of their parents, the opposite sex, then oftentimes they will be in relationships with people who have those similar difficulties, right? So if they had a mother who struggled to love them, right? Or who was a very explosive personality. Oftentimes they will end up in a relationship with someone quite similar, with some of those similar characteristics, because psychologically they're still trying to fix that issue. They couldn't fix it with their mother, so now they're trying to fix it by the partner that they attract, right? By the partner they get into a relationship with. That is so dangerous, because that is so not a recipe for happiness, right? Which is why I'm so insistent on doing your own inner work, doing your core work, doing the healing work. And in this book, I wrote probably one of the best healing techniques that I've ever seen and used for myself, that really takes you through the psychological process from kind of A to B of dealing with you can use it for anything, any core wound, doesn't matter what it is. And by going in and like recognizing and healing those core wounds, you can stop attracting that, because you're not doing it consciously, right? You're doing it subconsciously. And as you become more and more aware of those things in your life and in your mind, and be like, as you understand yourself better, as you understand your core wounds better, you can bring it up into your awareness, you can work on it and heal it, and then you can stop attracting that type of person as your partner in your love relationships. You see, you can shift that pattern. So that's what I mean by radical responsibility, taking responsibility. If I'm in a relationship with someone who isn't treating me well, if I'm in a relationship with someone who is not fulfilling their word, right, not showing up, and I'm in that relationship, that's whose fault is that? That's my fault. That's my fault. It's not their fault, because they are treating me as they're going to treat me, right? That's who they are. If I put up with it, that's due to my lack of self-esteem. You see, if I don't say, no, this is not how I expect to be treated, and walk away, right, then that is because there's a place inside of me that has low self-esteem, that is allowing that person to treat me that way, that is allowing that person to put me in second place. Understand? So I could go talk to my girlfriends and be like, oh, he's treating me so bad, and he's doing this, and he's not showing up, and right, all this kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, it's really me. You see, that's what I mean by radical responsibility. And by taking radical responsibility, you can take back the control of your life. You take back. Responsibility gives you the power. If I say this isn't right, I'm not going to be treated that way, I walk away. I take back my power, and I don't put up with anyone else doing that to me. Right? Now, it may be a while before I'm in a relationship if I'm sticking to that standard. But when someone recognizes that about you, they will treat you the way you expect to be treated. That really is the key. Aksar's laughing. Jay says, good work. Thank you. Yeah. So in the last years, I have walked away from a lot of relationships. I've walked away from a lot of people where, I spot that. I'm like, okay, wait, this person's more interested in their work than they are in what they're doing with me, or whatever it is, right? If I can spot those things, or if they say, okay, they said they were going to show up for this date, they canceled at the last minute, right? Okay, it's one thing if there's a real emergency that comes up. It's another thing if they're just like, oh, I got busy and I forgot, I'm like, okay, no, right? That is not being priority number one, right? Know who you are. You have that self-esteem, know what you expect. And then if someone is not there to do that, to provide that, they are not in that place, right? Then you don't need it. Walk away. That's having self-esteem. You see? That is self-esteem. Jay, no, I am not actually. I'm more of a mental health development and financial stuff is what I teach about. But anyway, so that is what I wanted to share with you about the power of radical responsibility, right? What's business? This happens in business all the time as well, right? Happens in business where you're getting into business with somebody and maybe you have a bit of a check on this person, right? Something inside doesn't feel quite right, okay? But you're like, okay, but here's the business deal and we have a contract and this and that. And you go ahead and you get into business with them anyway, and then they screw you over, right? Well, there was a check there, right? You did feel you ignored that check. See? that's that. And then recognizing that, be like, oh, wow, okay, that's my responsibility. If I ignore my inner voice about that, or if I don't do more due diligence, or, whatever that is, then that is actually on me. Yes, that person lied or stole, or, they didn't fulfill their word on the contract, or they screwed me over. Yeah, totally, they are at fault, right? They committed a violation. But you can't control other people's actions. The only person you can control is the actions of is yourself. So when you take responsibility, you say, okay, well, I noticed that when we met. I noticed that they seemed like a difficult person. And I noticed that in our conversations, they had talked about kind of things that were maybe a little shady or screwing somebody else over, right? And I just thought, oh, well, they won't do that to me, right? And I just kind of ignored it, right? So then recognizing, oh, wait, okay, I needed to learn a lesson from that so that I'm not to get drawn into that kind of thing again. That's radical responsibility. All right. And taking radical responsibility in relationships and being like, okay, that person cheated on me, but how did I contribute to that? What did I do? For a guy, right? I often hear guys and they'll be like, oh yeah, she cheated on me and this and that. I was like, okay, yeah, that really sucks. And obviously that was not part of your commitment. That was not part of your contract. But when you're going forward into a new relationship, instead of just taking the hurt of like, that person cheated on me, so, I need to be careful not to be with cheaters, right? Or just like being anti them, or thinking they're a bad person. Instead, asking yourself, well, how did I maybe contribute to that? Was I not what they needed in bed? Did I not give them orgasms, right? Was I busy too much? Was I away too much? Did I not spend enough time with them so they really felt like they were building a relationship with me, right? Yeah, they may have done that bad act and cheated, but there's two in a relationship. So asking yourself, what did I do that contributed to that happening, allows yourself to go forward into your next relationship and make sure you're not creating those same conditions again. So if someone's in a relationship and it keeps happening to them over and over, where like someone cheats on them and then they go into another relationship and that someone cheats on them again, right? And they go into another and someone cheats on them again, guess what? That's you. That's not them. Okay. There is something you are doing, or there is a type of person that you are attracted to that has that personality trait, or there's something you're doing in that relationship that is generating that. And it can be so hard for people to hear this. Oh my God, like the resistance you get, like, wasn't me. I didn't do it. I'm the good person, right? I did it right. I didn't cheat. It's really hard for the person who was cheated on to accept any responsibility for that and say, wait, maybe I did do something that contributed to this, to kind of this relationship not working out, right? Or to that person. Or maybe I just ignored all the warning signs when I first met them. Maybe I was trying to hope that they were going to be a different type of person, right? Like the number of people who get into a relationship with somebody who is cheating on their current partner and then get mad when that person cheats on them, right? It's like, you already saw who they were when you got into the relationship. Did you think that was going to change? So this is what I'm talking about with radical responsibility, really taking responsibility for the outcomes in your life, the outcomes of your relationships, because that's the only way you can move forward. That's the only way you can change and make sure that that thing doesn't happen again. Whatever you learn from that experience, you can change and make and do better in your next relationship to not have that same outcome again. But if you never learn anything from it because you just blame it all on the other person, then you're much more likely to get into that same type of situation again and again, right? And that's what you don't want, right? You don't want to keep getting in a relationship with people who treat you bad, or with someone who cheats on you, or with a business partner who cheats you, right? You don't want that pattern to keep happening. So you have to each time say, what did I do? What did I miss? What did I contribute to? What was my part in this? Because that's the only part you can change to create a better future for yourself. See? Alaxar says, Every leaving person teaches us a lot on how to deal with the same person in the future. Exactly, but only if we learn from it. I know lots and lots of people who experience the same things over and over. They keep getting themselves into the same situation financially, right? They keep repeating patterns because they're not learning from it. They're just blaming the outside world. They're blaming circumstances. Luxar says, love the way you express. Thank you. Thank you, Luxar. Thank you for the hearts. So, if you're just blaming circumstances and saying, well, I'm in this financial mess, because my car broke down and then I needed, a few $1,000s to fix it, right? Instead of being like, I always seem to get into this kind of financial mess. This is a pattern. I need to shift my entire way of doing finances so that I have a cushion, right? So that I have savings, so that I'm not continuously repeating this pattern. If you're a victim of what the world is doing to you, and just be like, well, this person did that, or I got fired from my job, or you know what I mean? That's constantly being in the victim. You're doing something bad to me, and I am the one suffering here. Instead of being like, wait, what did I do to get fired? What did I do to, it may not have been your fault, but maybe you missed something that your boss really wanted and wasn't in your job description. You're like, okay, I'm not putting up with that. Then fine. Then that's what you're going to do, right? And maybe you shouldn't put up with it, and you should leave, or you should let yourself get fired over it. So, but there might be something else that you could have been doing that could have resolved it or made things different, right? So, it's just taking that responsibility instead of constantly putting it out on others or on the world or on what other people do or on the economic circumstances of the world or anything like that, right? Always saying, well, what could I do? What did I do that contributed this? What can I change for next time? That way I have the power. It's in me, see? So I find that a lot of people struggle with this, accepting that the relationships they're in are the relationships they have attracted and the relationships that they have created from their own stuff, right? That can be really hard to accept and see. But when you do, that's when you get to have better relationships, because you go inside and you say, okay, this is the piece that is, that's hurting. So Luxar says, what if only the other person are wrong and it's all their fault? So that's what we're talking about, Luxar, is that that's never the case, right? That's never the case in a relationship. Now, it may be that they are the one that actually committed the violation, right? They're the one that cheated, right? You didn't cheat. So in that case, it can look like it's all their fault, right? That they're all wrong. But there's always something that you did to contribute to that, right? Whether it was, sometimes maybe you didn't understand their needs in a relationship, you didn't spend enough time together, or you didn't recognize who that person was from early on in the relationship. You didn't let yourself see them clearly for who they were. And you, like we talked about yesterday, trusting someone to be someone different than they are, it just doesn't work, right? So if you observe that person in their actions and in their daily life, and you saw that they cheated on their girlfriend in their last relationship, right? For you to try to trust that they're never going to cheat on you, you're trying to trust them to be somebody they're not. You see? That's what I mean by that kind of stuff, right? You may not have done anything wrong, but you weren't being aware of what was really happening. And it's easy to want to put blinders on. It's easy to want to not see what's going on, right? And it may be that you just didn't know what to look for, right? Because if you're young and you're innocent, you've not been in those situations before, you just don't know what to look for. So then in that case, it becomes really a learning lesson for next time. And you're like, okay, now I know kind of what to look for. If a person has these kinds of signs, is doing this kinds of stuff, then that tells me that they're someone who is maybe a bit deceitful, see? So then you can say, okay, that person seems really charming, but I see them like lying here or doing this there, like, okay, maybe that's not the kind of person I want to get in a relationship with, see? So That's what I mean by taking responsibility for it. Even if you didn't do the bad thing, right? You still have to take responsibility for your part in it, because that's the only part you can change to have a better life and a better relationship next time. Because you can't change the other person, right? They're going to be who they are. So that's what I wanted to say. Luxar says, is again need to change in ourself. Yes, exactly. It's the need to change in ourself, right? That's the one we can do. So if we are attracting people like that, then we need to look at ourselves and say, do I have some core wounds that I need to heal, so that I don't attract that into my life, so that I don't put up with that in my life? See, that's what it is all about. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a beautiful, amazing day. Thank you, Jay. Good to see you again. Thank you, Lexar, Autumn, Nessa, Israel, everybody. Good to see everyone. You guys have a beautiful, beautiful day. And I will see you tomorrow. All right.